Hey YouTube, we've got a fan-requested Axis and Allies video for you. You'll see that I have two boards set out here. I have Axis and Allies Revised, and I have Axis and Allies 1942 Second Edition. We're going to be looking at a lot of the differences between these two games, starting with territories. Territories are very different. Well, actually, even going prior to that, the map in 1942 Second Edition is much larger, or well, it's noticeably larger, which can be helpful, especially in tight quarters like over here where there tend to be lots of units, and then, maybe over here, sorry about that glare. So up here, it can still be kind of tight, but we have more space. So that's helpful. How the territories connect is also different. So for example, the United States in Revised can load up guys here and get them straight to England. At the same time, let's see, if England has a fleet out here, the German Navy that starts in Sea Zone 5 cannot hit it. It's too far away. Too many, one extra sea zone in the way. If we look at 42 Second Edition, the United States is not able to land in England on turn 1, though it can still get to North Africa. The German Navy over here can get the British Navy anywhere around the British Isles. So there's that. On the other side of the board, the Pacific looks very different. How the territories connect. Japan, in this version, could easily do a Pearl Harbor or Hawaii attack on turn 1 if it wanted to. It still can in 42 Second Edition, but has nowhere near the types, the number of forces, the strength that they can send there. So I don't see them make that move nearly as often in 42 Second Edition. You also see things like French Indochina does not butt up against India. We've got a territory in the way. China is multiple territories, or it's more than 2. It's now 4, which is a move I like. North Africa is 3 territories as opposed to 2, which I think is an improvement. And then the general border between Russia and Germany, it's set up a little bit differently so that you don't as easily get into kind of a stalemate between West Russia, Caucasus, and Ukraine. This thing here where Russia moves guys here and places guys here, Germany counterattacks, Russia counterattacks from both places, and on and on and on. So I think that that's an improvement as well in the new version as far as the map. It threw me off a little bit at first, the first time I played it, because it is so different. But after playing, this game a few times, I very quickly grew accustomed to it, and I definitely prefer it for a number of reasons. But let's talk about something more than just the map. So, because there are a few other things that you'll want to keep in mind. First off, tanks cost 6 in this version, whereas they cost the original 5 in this version. Transports in this version revised still defend at a 1. In Second Edition, they do not defend at all. They are defenseless. So you move 1 unit in where your enemy has unguarded transports, and you just kill them instantly. 10 transports, send 1 fighter after it, oh, it's gone. Or 1 sub. So that is something that you definitely want to be paying attention to, because you could lose half or all of your transports if you're not careful with them. And you need to build more surface ships, because you can no longer take transports as casualties. They have to be taken last, so basically all of your surface ships are destroyed, and then if the enemy still has the ability to attack another round, all of your transports are just destroyed. So that definitely changes how you need to prepare for naval combat, or like in the case of Great Britain, your defense of your transport fleet. Anti-air rules are also different in this game. So one thing that tended to happen, at least to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, in older versions of Axis and Allies, if I built a factory, I put it somewhere, and then my enemy, if they had an opportune moment, would just strategically bomb it. And there was no AA gun, and they basically got to do that with impunity, unless I wanted to take a turn to not build units that were normally desperately needed to build an AA gun with a 1 in 6 chance of ever hitting anyway. In 2nd edition here, every factory automatically gets an AA gun, but it is only allowed to attack incoming fighters during a strategic bombing raid. It is able to fire, you're able to roll 1 die for every attacking bomber, and for every 1 that comes up on your roll, you shoot down that bomber. So those rules function just like they always have. In addition to that, there is a specified anti-air unit that you can buy, you can move around, and the way those work is each one of those can take part in if the territory itself is being attacked by airplanes. So not strategic bombing, factory AA guns only come into play then. This is if the territory itself is being attacked. Your anti-air gun gets to fire. Each one can fire at up to 3 planes. You still only roll 1 die per plane. But if you are being attacked, let's say with 5, let's say by 5 fighters, and you have 1 AA gun there, you can only shoot at 3 of them. But let's say you had 2 AA guns there, you'd be able to roll 5 dice. In addition to that, and this can be key, especially in close battles, maybe battles for a capital. These AA guns can be taken as casualties. So something I like to do, if I do not fear losing the territory, I'll usually hold on to them, because keeping them around to defend against future air assaults or future assaults that involve air power is beneficial. However, if I think it's going to be a close battle, or I think that I'm probably going to lose it and I just want to inflict as many casualties as possible, I will, of course, roll for the AA gun in the opening round, and then it will be in my first round of casualties. So let's say that the enemy scores 3 hits. One of those hits I'm going to place on my AA gun, because it doesn't fire every round, it only fires the first round. So for the rest of that battle, it's basically useless. Now if I hold the territory, and then my enemy attacks it a second time, then I get the next round of AA fire, and that can be beneficial. But if I'm probably going to lose the territory, or it's really close and I want every advantage, I'm going to lose that first, because it can be taken as a casualty, but it does not get to roll a defense dice aside from that first round of anti-aircraft fire. So it's not going to help me out the rest of the battle, and I'd rather have my infantry or my tanks that actually do get to roll on defense. I'd much rather have them going as long as possible. Let's see here. Those are a couple of the larger things. So we've got the size, we've got the map, we've got the transports, the tank cost, the anti-air guns, which is very different. You also have a couple different factories. So England, the UK, starts with a factory in India. That's something that in Revised, my friends and I would always toy around with, building a factory in India on the first turn. Usually when that happened, Japan would go all out, everything they possibly could, ignoring China even if necessary, to snag that factory. But in 42 2nd edition, England starts with a factory there. That allows England to focus on, it allows it to protect more of its empire if it wants to, potentially. It allows it to split its resources, so it isn't just dumping everything up there, and it really can't do anything else, and it just has to. It can't do anything aside from sit there and watch as the rest of its empire gets destroyed. Russia also gets a factory up there in Leningrad, which it does not get in Revised. In Revised, it gets one in Russia, in Moscow, and then in Caucasus. Well, in 42nd edition, it still gets the one in Caucasus, one in Moscow, but also one in Leningrad. I never really played too much with victory cities in Axis and Allies Revised, but they do come into play very prominently when it comes to tournament matches, as I experienced at Origins, and I'm sure if any of you have participated in tournaments, either at Origins, Gen Con, or one of the other conventions, you've experienced much the same thing. So I would recommend making note of where the victory cities are, which ones are probably secure on your side and the other side, and which ones you have a good chance of going after. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with where they are in Revised, but in 42nd edition, so of course you have all the capitals. Hawaii is a victory city over here. You've got Shanghai there, Manila, Calcutta over in India. Stalingrad actually is not on here. It is an anniversary though. Leningrad up there, Rome, Paris, and then London, because that's the capital. So I think that covers all of them. So those are a number of differences between these versions. Even though I kind of came of age during the Revised, after getting used to 42nd edition, I do like that one quite a bit. And as you know from a previous video, I had some concerns about the tournament revisions that are aimed at rebalancing, because unlike most games of Axis and Allies, it's 42nd edition, the Axis are considered to have a significant advantage. And I had some serious concerns that the adjustments went too far the other way. I've now played a couple games with it. It's iffy. I've never felt on either side like the Allies were just dominating, which is what I feared would be the case when it went too far the other direction. Is it perfectly balanced? I need to play some more games with the tournament setup to say that, but it's reasonably within balance, I think. In fact, I just finished a game today against a friend of mine who's very into Axis and Allies, but he had never played this version before, and we both found it to be fairly well balanced. He's very well versed in Axis and Allies. He just had never played this particular version before, so I gave him a rundown, let him borrow my map to study it, so he could be as well versed as possible before we met, because I wanted it to be as even as possible. But he also, in Revised and in 1942 First Edition, which is much like Revised as far as the map goes, except it does have some rule adjustments, like you have the transports can't defend, for example, that you also have in 1942. And he tends to beat me in those games, so I don't want anybody to think that I was like trying to beat up on a new guy. He's beaten me more in Axis and Allies in the various versions, and I've beat him. So it was a good game. I went on for about 10 rounds. So it was a very good game. I did come out ahead on that one. Let's see. Oh, almost forgot. So there's one other thing about 1942 that is not present in Revised. You have the cruiser unit. Oh, and aside from tanks, the costs of some units have changed. Transports are 7, subs are 6, and subs defend at a 1 and attack at a 2. You also have cruisers. So cruisers attack and defend at a 3, and they can coastally bombard. They do not get to double hit. like battleships, and they cost 12. So they don't get any bonuses against subs like destroyers do. They're just like a weaker battleship. So one hit, 3/3, but they do cost quite a bit less. They only cost 12 as opposed to 20. So that's my rundown of the differences. I'm sure if I really got into it, I'm probably forgetting one or two, but those are the big ones that come to mind. If you have played Revised and you're thinking about switching to the most up-to-date World War II map that is not global, I hope this is very helpful to you. And if you have any other thoughts about videos, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thanks, everybody.